My hands trembled as I stared at the check my daughter was holding. $25,000, made out to me, dated 6 months ago. "Mom, I don't understand," Rebecca said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You told me last week you couldn't afford your medication, but I've been sending you $5,000 every month since Dad passed away. That's $30,000. The room felt like it was spinning. We were sitting in her office at the tech company she'd founded here in Vancouver, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. She'd asked me to stop by after my doctor's appointment, said she wanted to take me to lunch. I thought it was just a regular visit with my daughter. I never expected this. "Sweetheart, I haven't received any money," I managed to say, my voice cracking. "I've been living on your father's pension, $1,200 a month. I've been buying my prescriptions from online pharmacies in India because I can't afford the Canadian prices." Rebecca's face went pale. She pulled up something on her computer screen, turned it toward me. Bank statements. 6 transfers, each for $5,000 sent from her account to mine. All confirmed, all received. "The money went into your account, Mom. The bank confirmed it. Every single transfer was successful." That's when my son-in-law walked in. Marcus had his phone pressed to his ear, laughing about something. He was wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and there was a new Omega watch on his wrist that caught the light as he moved. He'd been working as a financial advisor for the past 8 years, ever since he and Rebecca got married. "Sorry, babe, that was just—" He stopped when he saw both our faces. "What's wrong?" Rebecca stood up. "Marcus, Mom says she never received the money I've been sending her." "What money?" He looked genuinely confused. "The $30,000. For her living expenses. Since Dad died." Something flickered across Marcus's face, just for a second. Then he smiled. "Oh, that money. Linda, remember? We talked about this. I set up that high-interest savings account for you. It's all there, building interest. I told you I'd manage it so you'd have more for later." I stared at him. "We never talked about any savings account." "Mom, you're 73, Marcus said gently. "I know it's hard, but sometimes you forget our conversations. It's nothing to be ashamed of. I have all the paperwork at home. I'll bring it by tonight, and we can go through it together." Rebecca looked between us, uncertain. "Mom, is that true? Did you forget?" "I didn't forget anything," I said firmly. "I have never spoken to Marcus about my finances, not once." Marcus sighed, the picture of patience. "Linda, we literally sat in your kitchen in April. You were worried about managing a lump sum. I offered to help, and you agreed. Remember? You made that casserole, the one with the—" "I don't eat casseroles," I interrupted. "I haven't since your father died. They remind me too much of him." The smile on Marcus's face didn't waver, but his eyes hardened. "Well, regardless, the money is safe. I'll bring the statements tonight." "Bring them now," Rebecca said suddenly. "We'll wait." "Babe, I have a client meeting in 20 minutes. Cancel it." Marcus looked at his wife for a long moment. Then he turned and walked out without another word. Rebecca and I sat in silence after he left. I could see her mind working, the same way it had when she was a little girl trying to solve math problems at the kitchen table. She'd always been brilliant, my Rebecca. Full scholarship to UBC, started her first company at 28, sold it for millions before she was 35. She'd inherited her father's brain for numbers and my stubborn streak. "Mom," she said finally, "tell me everything. From the beginning. When did you first need help with money?" So I told her. About how your father's pension was supposed to be enough, but with rent increases and food prices and medication costs, it barely covered basics. About how I'd started volunteering at the food bank on Tuesdays, partly to help others, but mostly because they let volunteers take home the nearly expired items. About how I'd canceled my internet to save $40 a month, and now I went to the library to check email. About the heating bill I'd been paying late because I had to choose between warmth and eating. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. "Why didn't you tell me? You've done so much already. After your father died, you paid for the funeral. You helped me with the first month's rent when I had to move out of our house. I couldn't keep asking. That's why I set up the automatic transfers, so you wouldn't have to ask." She pulled out her phone and called the bank right there. Put it on speaker, went through security questions, asked them to trace every transfer. The banking representative confirmed it all. $5,000 sent from Rebecca's business account to my personal checking account on the 15th of every month for 6 months. All received, all withdrawn within 48 hours of deposit. Transferred to another account. What account? Rebecca demanded. A joint account, the representative said. The secondary account holder is listed as Marcus Whitfield. Rebecca's hand clenched around her phone. My mother has never had a joint account with my husband. I'm looking at the documentation here, ma'am. It was opened 3 years ago. Both signatures are on file. That's not my signature, I said. I've never signed anything for Marcus. After Rebecca ended the call, she sat very still. I knew that look. She was the same way before she fired her first CFO for embezzling. Calm on the surface, but underneath, calculating every move. Where did Marcus say he was going? She asked. Client meeting. She checked something on her computer. He doesn't have any client meetings scheduled today. I can see his calendar. We share them. She started typing, pulling up files, bank records, credit card statements. She had access to everything through their joint accounts. I watched as my daughter went through 2 years of Marcus's spending with the precision of a forensic accountant. The new truck, $45,000, paid in cash last March. The business trip to Las Vegas, $15,000 in poker losses at the Bellagio. The Rolex I'd noticed earlier, $12,000, purchased 2 months ago. A down payment on a condo in Whistler, $75,000, in his name only. He told me his investment portfolio was doing well, Rebecca said quietly. He said he'd had some lucky breaks with cryptocurrency. She pulled up his actual investment accounts. They were nearly empty. Whatever money he'd had was gone. Then she found the other account, a personal checking account I didn't know existed. And every month, like clockwork, there was my money. $5,000 in, 48 hours later, $5,000 out to pay for his lifestyle. I'm going to be sick, Rebecca said. She wasn't, though. Instead, she picked up her phone and called her lawyer. Then she called the police. When Marcus came home that evening to the penthouse condo that Rebecca had bought before they got married, there were 2 officers waiting. Rebecca and I were there too, with her lawyer and a stack of printed bank statements 3 inches thick. Marcus saw us all and stopped in the doorway. He was carrying a folder, presumably the fake documents he'd been preparing. Marcus Whitfield, one of the officers said, we need to ask you some questions about fraudulent activity. He looked at Rebecca. Really looked at her. And for the first time since I'd known him, the charm disappeared. What was left was something cold and calculating. You're choosing her over me? You stole from my mother, Rebecca said. Her voice was steady. You forged her signature. You committed fraud. This isn't a choice. This is the law. I borrowed it. I was going to pay it back. With what money, Marcus? Your accounts are empty. You gambled away everything you had, and then you started stealing from my mother, a 73-year-old widow. He turned to me then. Linda, you know I never meant to hurt you. It was just temporary. I had some bad luck with investments. I just needed time to recover. You let me ration my heart medication, I said. My voice was shaking now, all the months of fear and stress finally breaking through. I have been skipping doses because I couldn't afford to refill my prescription. You watched me get thinner. You saw me wearing the same 3 outfits because I couldn't afford new clothes, and you said nothing. You did nothing. You let me suffer while you bought watches and trucks and gambled in Las Vegas. I didn't know it was that bad. You knew exactly how bad it was, Rebecca said. You set up the transfers. You knew I was sending that money to help her. You knew she was struggling, and you stole from her anyway. The police interviewed all of us that night. It took hours. They took the folder Marcus had been carrying. Inside were fake bank statements he'd created, showing a savings account in my name with $32,000 in it. He'd even forged monthly interest payments. If Rebecca hadn't confronted him at her office, if she'd waited until he brought the papers to my apartment like he'd planned, I might have believed him. The investigation took 3 months. Marcus hired an expensive lawyer who tried to argue that it was a family matter, that I'd given permission for him to manage the money. But the forensic accountant Rebecca hired found everything. The forged signature on the joint account application, the IP address from his computer where he'd created the fake statements, the paper trail of every dollar he'd stolen and where it had gone. There were other things, too, things that came out during the investigation. Marcus had done this before, to his own mother, small amounts over years that she'd never noticed because she had dementia. He drained $18,000 from her before his sister discovered it and made him pay it back. That's why none of his family spoke to him anymore. Rebecca had never known. He told her they were estranged over politics. The trial was in January, almost a year after that day in Rebecca's office. I sat in the courtroom and watched as the Crown prosecutor presented all the evidence, the bank records, the forged documents, the testimony from the handwriting expert who confirmed the signature on the joint account wasn't mine. Marcus's lawyer tried to make me look confused, forgetful, asked me questions about dates and times, tried to catch me in contradictions. But I'd spent the past months going through everything with Rebecca, organizing it all, making sure every detail was accurate. I wasn't confused. I was angry. When I testified, I looked right at Marcus. You married my daughter, and we welcomed you into our family. When my husband was dying, you sat beside his hospital bed and told him you'd take care of me. You shook his hand and promised him, and then you stole from me. You didn't just take money. You took my security, my peace of mind. You made me feel like I was failing when all along it was you. The jury took 4 hours to deliberate. They found him guilty on all counts: fraud, forgery, theft, over $5,000. The judge sentenced him to 4 years in prison and ordered him to pay back every dollar, plus interest, plus Rebecca's legal fees. Rebecca divorced him before he'd served 6 months. She didn't take anything from him because he had nothing left. His condo was mortgaged to the hilt to pay for his legal defense. His truck was repossessed. Even the watch was gone, sold to pay debts. As for me, Rebecca insisted I move into her house. She had 5 bedrooms and lived alone now. I resisted at first, still clinging to my independence, but she pointed out that I could help her. She worked long hours building her new company, and she needed someone to manage the house, to cook meals, to make sure there was actual food in the refrigerator and not just takeout containers. "You'd be doing me a favor, Mom," she said, and I could tell she meant it. So I moved in. My daughter replaced all my medications with proper prescriptions. She set up automatic transfers again, but this time into an account only I could access. She even helped me learn to use a smartphone so I could check my balance anytime I wanted. The house is beautiful, overlooking the ocean in West Vancouver. I have my own suite on the main floor with a sitting room and a private bathroom. Rebecca converted one of the uprooms into a craft studio for me because she remembered how I used to love quilting before your father got sick and I had to sell my sewing machine. I've started volunteering again, but this time at a center that helps seniors who've been victims of financial fraud. There are more of us than you'd think. Elder financial abuse is one of the fastest-growing crimes in Canada, and most of it is committed by family members, people who are supposed to love and protect us. I tell my story at workshops sometimes. Other seniors come up to me afterward and whisper about their own situations. Adult children who've taken over their bank accounts and won't give them access. Grandchildren who've forged signatures on reverse mortgages. Caregivers who've slowly drained life savings. The hardest part isn't the money, it's the betrayal. It's looking at someone you trusted, someone you loved, and realizing they saw you as a mark, as someone to exploit. But I also tell them about Rebecca, about how she believed me when Marcus tried to make her doubt, about how she fought for me, spent her own money on lawyers and accountants to prove what had happened, about how she made sure he faced consequences. Not every family member will protect you, I tell them, but the ones who truly love you will move heaven and earth to keep you safe. Last month was Rebecca's 40th birthday. I made her favorite cake, the same one I used to make when she was little. Chocolate with raspberry filling. We ate it on the back deck, watching the sunset over the water. "Thank you," she said suddenly, "for trusting me enough to tell me the truth, for letting me help you." "Thank you for believing me," I said, "for not letting him convince you I was confused or forgetful, for standing by me." She squeezed my hand. "You taught me that, you know. You and Dad. You taught me that protecting the people you love isn't optional. It's not something you do when it's convenient. It's what you do. Always. I think about that conversation sometimes when I'm working with other seniors who've been victimized. So many of them are ashamed, embarrassed that they didn't see it coming. They blame themselves for trusting the wrong person. But trust isn't the problem. Trust is what families are supposed to be built on. The problem is the people who violate that trust, who see vulnerability as opportunity, who take advantage of love and loyalty to line their own pockets. Marcus got out of prison last month after serving 2 years. I heard through Rebecca's lawyer that he moved to Toronto, got a job in sales. He's not allowed to contact either of us as part of his parole conditions. I doubt he would anyway. Sometimes I wonder if he thinks about what he did, if he regrets it, if he understands that he didn't just steal money. He stole time I could have spent without fear. He stole dignity. He stole the last years I should have had where I felt secure and cared for. But then I look at my life now. I look at my daughter, who calls me every day at lunch just to check in. I look at the work I do, helping other seniors protect themselves. I look at the quilt I'm making, the one I'll give to Rebecca when she gets married again someday, to someone who actually deserves her. Marcus took a lot from me, but he didn't take everything. He didn't take my voice, he didn't take my dignity, and he didn't take my daughter's love and respect. Those things, the things that actually matter, he could never touch. This morning, I had coffee with Margaret, another volunteer at the center. She's 81 and was scammed by her nephew out of $40,000. It took her 3 years to report it because she was so ashamed. But yesterday, she testified in court and he was convicted. "I did it," she said, her hands shaking around her cup. "I actually did it." "You did," I told her. "You were brave. You spoke up. You refused to let him get away with it." She started crying then, but they were good tears. Relief tears, the kind you cry when you've been carrying something heavy for so long and finally get to set it down. That's what justice feels like. Not revenge, not even satisfaction exactly, just the ability to finally put down the weight you've been carrying and start to heal. If I could tell my younger self anything, the me from a year ago who was sitting in that apartment rationing medication and wondering how I'd make it through another month, I'd tell her this: speak up. Tell the truth even when someone you love is trying to convince you you're wrong. Trust your instincts, and know that real love, the kind that matters, will always choose truth over comfort. Rebecca has a saying she picked up somewhere: when someone shows you who they are, believe them. Marcus showed us exactly who he was. A man willing to let his wife's mother suffer so he could buy luxuries. A man who could forge signatures and create fake documents without hesitation. A man who saw an elderly widow as an easy target. We believed what he showed us. And then we made sure he faced the consequences. That's the other lesson I share at the workshops. You can't control who betrays you. You can't always prevent it, but you can control what happens next. You can choose to speak up. You can choose to fight back. You can choose to make sure they don't do it to someone else. Justice isn't just about punishment, it's about protection. When Marcus was convicted, when the judge handed down that sentence, it wasn't just about what he'd done to me. It was a warning to everyone else like him. A reminder that elder abuse has consequences, that we're not invisible, that we matter. Every senior I work with now, I tell them the same thing. You are not too old to matter. You are not too vulnerable to deserve protection. You are not a burden. And if someone makes you feel like any of those things, if someone takes advantage of your age or your trust, you have every right to speak up and demand justice. Rebecca asked me last week if I was happy. We were in the garden, planting tomatoes. It's something we used to do with your father every spring. I thought about it. Really thought about it. A year ago, I was alone, struggling, afraid. Now I'm here, in this beautiful house with my daughter, doing work that matters, helping people who need it. Yes, I told her, I'm happy. Not despite what happened, maybe even because of it, in some strange way. It brought us closer. It gave me purpose. It taught me that I'm stronger than I thought I was. She hugged me then, getting dirt on both our shirts. You've always been strong, Mom. The rest of us are just finally catching up. That evening, I got an email from the center. a woman I'd worked with 6 months ago, helping her file charges against her son for stealing her disability payments. The trial had concluded. He was convicted. She was getting restitution, and he was going to prison. "Thank you for believing me," she wrote. "Thank you for teaching me to believe myself." I printed that email and pinned it to the bulletin board in my craft studio. It's there alongside photos of Rebecca, of your father, of the garden in bloom. It's there alongside the quote I embroidered last month: "The opposite of poverty isn't wealth, it's justice." Marcus thought he could steal my money and get away with it because I was old, because I was vulnerable, because he assumed I'd be too ashamed or too confused to fight back. He thought wrong on all counts. I wasn't too old, I wasn't too confused, and I definitely wasn't too ashamed. I was a widow who'd raised a daughter, buried a husband, survived grief and loss, and 73 years of life's challenges. I was a woman who knew the difference between kindness and manipulation. I was a mother who taught her daughter to stand up for what's right. And most importantly, I was someone who understood that silence protects abusers, that speaking up, no matter how hard or scary, is the only way things change. So I spoke up, we fought back, and we won. Not just the trial, not just the money, we won something bigger. We won the right to hold our heads high. We won the satisfaction of knowing we didn't let him get away with it. We won the peace of mind that comes from doing the hard, right thing. And every time I help another senior find their voice, tell their story, fight for their justice, we win again. That's the real victory. Not money in a bank account, not a guilty verdict, but the knowledge that we matter, that we're worth fighting for, that our dignity and security and peace of mind are worth protecting. Marcus taught me that lesson, though I doubt it's the one he intended. He taught me that the strongest bonds aren't the ones that never get tested. They're the ones that survive the testing. They're the ones where people choose each other, actively and deliberately, even when it's hard. Rebecca chose me. She chose truth. She chose justice. And I chose to keep living, keep fighting, keep believing that the world can be a place where the vulnerable are protected and the people who harm them are held accountable. That's the story I tell now. Not about being a victim, about being a survivor, about being someone who refused to stay silent, about being a mother whose daughter loved her enough to believe her, fight for her, and make sure she was safe. It's a better story than the one Marcus tried to write, and it's the one I'm choosing to live every single day.